Let's talk about the number one reason you're not losing weight. It is absolutely not what you think it is. And I have been dying to do this video. This is a conversation we've got to have. So I want to explain what is happening to your body when you're doing all the right things and you're not losing weight. This is the video you're going to want to hear. And I'm going to give you 5 things you can do to reverse this situation so that you finally lose weight, because I get it. So many of you are working so hard to lose weight and you're not getting the results. So you're going to want to hear what I have to say. Okay, ready? There's one word I want you to think about right now, and that word is safety. When your body doesn't feel safe, it will not lose weight. So it will think that it is running from a tiger. You are in a primal body in a modern world. So even though tigers aren't chasing you per se, you have mini tiger moments all day long. Every time you go to your phone, when you step into work, your relationships, your overscheduled life, these are mini tigers coming after you, and your body's like, I'm not safe. And so if I'm not safe, then I'm not going to burn fat. So understand that if you need to lose weight or you want to lose weight, then first thing we've got to do is get your body feeling safe again. So there are 5 ways we can do that. And it's all built around a part of your nervous system called your parasympathetic nervous system. So think about this. I want to paint the picture before I go into these 5 things for a moment. You're meant to go into fight or flight and rest and digest. So you have a stressful event, your body ramps up cortisol, it starts to get into this hyperactive state to help you handle the stress, then the stress should be gone, and all of a sudden you go into rest and you recover. So the stress state is called your sympathetic nervous system. The rest and recovery state is called your parasympathetic nervous system. And it should be like a teeter-totter. You should be moving in and out of these 2 states. But what's happening to so many of us is that we are overscheduled, we are working so hard, we are trying to fast so hard, we're trying to work out so hard, so we're getting locked in this sympathetic state. And we lose the ability to access our parasympathetic state. And this is happening to so many of you for years and years and years. So you come to the fasting lifestyle and all of a sudden you're like, okay, I'm going to do 1 meal a day. I'm going to do the longer fast. The basic premise of Fast Like a Girl is to learn the softer side of you. And this is for both men and women. You know, parasympathetic, sympathetic isn't a man-woman issue. We all humans have this. So we need to figure out how to build up this parasympathetic state. It's like a muscle you haven't used that we've got to start using. So my first hack is less is more. Now this one's going to blow you away. I was recently talking to a patient who is really stuck with her weight. She's doing 1 meal a day. She's training for some extreme sports. And we worked with her fasting window. I worked with upping protein. I did all my favorite hacks to help her lose weight. And she was actually gaining weight. And so the last thing I had to tell her to do was to stop fasting so much. Go back to eating 3 meals a day. Stop. She was exercising every single day, hardcore. Stop exercising so much. And the minute I pulled her out of that extreme state, she was actually eating more and doing less exercise and starting to lose weight. It baffles, it baffles me, and it goes against every logical thinking that you might have. But we cannot stress our way into weight loss. There's going to be a point at which doing more and more and more of the right things is actually the wrong thing to do. So make sure you're stepping out of that state. Number 2, mindfulness training. This nervous system needs to be trained. It's not like you can just have access to it when you've been over-dominating the opposite nervous system for so long. So this is where breath work. Are you doing breath work every morning? Are you meditating every morning? What's your gratitude practice look like? Are you spending 20 minutes each morning thinking about how grateful you are? Are you prioritizing self-care like a massage? One of the fascinating things that I noticed about massage when I first started wearing CGMs and looking at my ketones was that when I went into a massage, I came out and my ketones were higher and my blood sugar was lower than before the massage. Well, that was because my body went into safety and I hadn't been eating. So all of a sudden I went into a massage in a fasted state and I got into a deeper ketosis because my body felt safe and relaxed. So you've got to look at those mindfulness tools as not just like, I'll get to them someday. If you're trying to lose weight and you're stuck, this is the day to get to them. Okay, number 3, and this is what I call a parasympathetic biohack. In order to train this system, you might have to pull in some of the biohacks. And my favorite is infrared sauna. Because I know, again, I'm a rushing woman. All of these things I'm telling you, I'm starting to implement myself. I've applied them in my own life. And what I've learned when I step into an infrared sauna is I can be in this incredibly stressed out state and not know how to get myself into parasympathetic. But you put me in a sauna and boom, within 5 minutes, I'm in that parasympathetic state. And literally the beautiful thing about parasympathetic using something like that is you're just sitting there. You're sitting there and the piece of equipment is doing the healing for you. I can't think of anything better than that. Okay, number 4, hopefully you all know this, is that if you're struggling to lose weight and you're a woman, you better be fasting like a girl. That is the whole reason I wrote the book, was to show you how to ebb and flow with the fast and the food so that you could get the best result, not just with balancing your hormones, but with burning fat. In fact, pretty sure we put it in the subtitle that it's a healing power of fasting to burn fat. I put it right there first. The strategies in here are all built around teaching women how to get the best out of their fasting lifestyle. So make sure you're fasting like a girl. Okay, and then number 5 is prioritize sleep. You burn the most amount of fat when you sleep. Let me repeat that. You burn fat when you sleep. So if you're fasting, if you're working out all the time, you're living a high stress life and you're skimping on sleep, you will get stuck. You've got to prioritize sleep. 7 to 9 hours is the best. We want you getting 2 hours of deep, 2 hours of REM. I've done a lot of videos on sleep. So that's all 5. And I really, really believe that when we're not losing weight, it's our body's way of talking to us. Your body's saying, I don't feel safe. I need you to make me feel safe. And those 5 things will absolutely do that.
What are some of the biggest things that people get wrong about fasting?
Oh, it's a great first start. The biggest thing is they hook onto one fast and they do it the same way over and over and over again. So once they come to fasting, they go, okay, wow, got great results. I feel incredible. I'm just skipping breakfast. I'm starting to eat at noon every day. And they just do that for months and months and months. And then they get stuck.
Why would that repetition be a problem? And is there like a right entry point?
Yeah.
Because I think if people haven't tried fasting, they probably just think, just don't eat. Or, and this will be interesting, there are things that I probably don't consider a fast that you might consider a fast.
Yeah.
So let's get into that. Is there one beginner's entry point to fasting?
Yeah. You know where the beginner's entry point is? If you really want it to be like smooth, it's with your food. So if you want fasting that whole world of fasting to become much easier, the first thing is change 3 ingredients. Change your oils, change your carbs, so you're eating more of nature's carbs, less refined carbs, and get off any toxic ingredients. If you change those 3 things, now you're going to metabolically switch over into what we call the fat burning state much quicker. Now, you don't have to, and a lot of people don't. But if you're asking me what's the easiest door in, it's just let's clean up a little bit of the diet. Now, the second step is let's just start pushing your breakfast back like a half hour, an hour. And what you're going for is you're trying to compress all of your food into one eating window. And if you do those 2 things, it's kind of like there's a click that happens. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, you're fasting, it's easier. It just becomes effortless because it's our natural state. It's the way the body was designed to be. So, but toxic ingredients, toxic food makes us more insulin resistant. Eating all day is destroying mitochondrial energy. And so we're not able to make that switch as easily, which is why I like to start with the food.
Interesting. Okay, so to do a fast well, step 1 is to reorient your diet to something that isn't causing metabolic damage. I'm not sure.
Yeah, inflammatory metabolic damage. So you're looking like, let's use an example. canola oil or like cottonseed oil or some of those more.
Basically, the oils that everything you eat, unless you are buying whole food and
That's
cooking
right.
yourself, is cooked in.
Okay, so there's bing, bing, bing. That's the answer right there is let's get back to whole foods that are coming out of nature. And if I went into your house and I just swapped out all the oils for avocado oil and olive oil, you'd be you wouldn't notice a taste, and it's the same to cook with. And if you're doing that mixed with whole foods and meats, if you eat meats, then now you're actually more congruent with what the human body wants. It's when we get all these fancy ingredients and toxic, inflammatory, easy to make ingredients that it makes that metabolic switch so much more difficult, which is why I always say and it's not like it doesn't have to be rigid. You can be playful about it. Like, let me just see what I can do to stop eating so many inflammatory oils.
Mindy, there's nothing playful about starving to death. So it's interesting. As you're saying this, I'm like, wow, I'm one of the people that would probably propagate some of the myths and create problems for people because I'm forgetting how hard it was for me to metabolically transition because I did it so long ago. So, going back to this framing of, okay, before you want to fast, you want to get things right. Literally until 9 seconds ago when you said that, my instinct would be to tell people, hey, just start lengthening the window between what you eat is.
Yeah.
But if I flash back to when I went low carb, so I didn't even consider fasting, didn't think about fasting. And honestly, I think, 20 plus years ago when I started all this, I would have thought of fasting as dangerous. And part of the reason I would have thought of fasting as dangerous is going without food, but really it was sugar because I was a sugar burner at the time. It hurt. You know what I mean? Like, so I'll do this frequently when I have a guest on around fasting. So I'm fasted right now.
Yeah.
I'm
Excellent.
over 19 hours into my fast as we're doing this. And there's no sense of suffering.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, I have a mild sense that I'm hungry.
Yep.
But it's not overwhelming. It's certainly not impairing my cognition. But when I first went low carb, it was so devastating. And I had these terrible headaches. And I remember my wife and I got in this big fight because I was like, if I just eat a cookie, I will feel better. And she was like, then eat the cookie, but stop complaining. Like whatever you're going to do, either get on the other side of this or eat the cookie, but don't not eat the cookie and keep complaining. And so I was like, okay, that's probably pretty good advice. So for somebody who's at the beginning, walk me through, you mentioned it, but let's go a little bit deeper in terms of what is that click over that people are looking for? What is metabolic flexibility?
Yeah.
What is being a sugar burner? How do we get on the other side of that?
Yeah, it's such a good question. And it's interesting because I'm thinking as you're talking, I'm like, yeah, my advice used to be, hey, the door into fasting is compress the eating window and leave a longer period of time for fasting. But we just saw millions of people on my YouTube channel where they would write in comments and they're like, I can't metabolically switch over. I'm really struggling. So then I started to change. Well, let's start by cleaning up a few things.
So they're fasting, but they feel terrible?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. So, and that's the thing is that we need to look at this like a switch. So when you're eating food, you are in a sugar burner state. So what's happening is that your blood sugar is going up and then you stop eating and then the blood sugar starts to come down. And usually when it gets to a certain point, you get hungry. And so you eat again. And so you're just doing this all day long. But what we're saying when you want to be metabolically flexible is we want to keep your blood sugar fairly low so that we can switch you over into this fat burning place. And once you switch over into the fat burner place, there's a whole world of healing, internal healing that is going to happen. A lot more than just weight loss. There's a lot more brain, like to your point, I love that you show up fasted. I showed up fasted too. And I do it as a performance tool because I know I'm going to get ketones that are going to power up my brain. I know inflammation's going to come down. I know I can get rid of senescent cells. I know I can reboot my immune system. I know I can add more dopamine receptor sites the longer I stay over here. But if I'm over here bringing my blood sugar up all the time, getting this switch becomes like rusty and you just can't get over there. So the suffering happens in that switch. And that's what I'm trying to get people out of because Fasting is like sleeping. It is our natural healing state. And just because we know sleeping is amazing doesn't mean that everybody can sleep.
It's really interesting. So I want people to understand, and some people will be, they'll already know a lot about fasting, and fair enough. But for people that don't understand, there are actually two fuel sources that your body can use: glucose, sugar.
Yep.
That's where most people spend all their time. And even if you're eating a high protein diet, some of the protein can be turned by your body into glucose.
Yep.
And so most people live their entire lives there in a modern context. But from an evolutionary context, your body would need to be able to go, whoa, there's no food. I can't just keel over and die. And this is the whole point of storing body fat.
Yep.
But I think one thing that people miss is that if you're constantly intaking calories, especially if you're eating a lot of carbohydrates, you may never, and I mean never, switch over into burning your fat. And so your body is just storing. And I remember the first time it hit me that, hold on a second, there are people who they are literally only getting fatter their entire lives. So the fat that they put on when they were 9 is still just stored, and it's never been released, because you're only going to release that fat if the blood sugar drops to a certain level for an extended period of time, and then your insulin becomes low, and now the fat can actually be released into the body. That was like startling. And I was like, oh my God. So what we're trying to do is create a scenario where, and for people that are just listening, not watching, we both keep doing this motion with our hands of like clicking over. You're trying to create the setup so that your body will go, oh, word, I don't have any food coming in. So I need now to switch the machinery, the literal metabolic machinery, over to burning ketones instead of glucose.
Yeah.
Once you do it, and this is the thing I always try to get people to understand, once you do this, it will change your relationship to hunger. It isn't that you don't feel hunger. Like, I'm hungry right now. It's not overwhelming by any means, but I am hungry, but I'm not distracted by it. It's not diminishing my performance. And so hunger goes from this thing of like, it's all consuming. It changes my mood. I can't be productive, to, yes, I would like to eat, but there's no sense of urgency.
So well said. So well said. So I had the same aha moment when I first dove into the science of fasting. It hit me one day. I was like, oh my God, we have the wrong discussion when it comes to weight loss and food. We're over here looking at the sugar burner system, and we're saying, this is the diet that, maybe it's vegan, maybe it's carnivore, maybe it's the HGH diet, maybe it's Weight Watchers, whatever. We're over here debating the weight loss diet. And we've left the whole fat burning system out of the equation. Like, how did we get as humans to this point where we have only been looking at food as the possibility for gaining or losing weight? We've missed out a whole metabolism. And I think that's what I want people to understand is this is how your body burns fat. It does not burn fat by manipulating food. It burns fat by manipulating when you eat and how much time you're giving the body a break from whatever food you've chosen. That's how you burn fat.
It's really interesting. So when we talk about step 1, if you want to get into fasting, is actually to change the foods that you intake when you are eating. When I think about some of the fad diets that have happened where, people are like doing juice cleanses and stuff like that, and it ends up not being sustainable, they must be getting into a fat burning mode just through the sheer reduction of calories, but is it just that it becomes so hard to switch the metabolism over that it's a very unpleasant thing to go that long without calories because the juice is so high in carbohydrate?
Well, so with the calorie conversation, all we've done in reducing calories over here or upping our exercise is we change our set point. So let's use an example. Let's say you bring in 1,000 calories, or let's give it a little more, 1,500 calories.
Which is still very low.
Very low. And you exercise 500. So now you have a delta of 1,000. So in order to keep the weight that you're at, you have to always have around that delta of 1,000 calories. What happened with fasting that changed the weight loss game is people got out of that mode and they started to see, wait, if I just change the time period, then what happens is I go over here into this fat burning mode and I can be there 19 hours, 20 hours, 36 hours is one of the greatest weight loss fasting lengths. And my body is so smart that what it does is it says, to your point, hey, word, there's no food coming in. So we're going to click over into another fuel source called ketones, and we're going to make this ketone by burning fat. And the only way we can get that is by clicking over. We can't even get that by reducing our carbs down. We can't get that by, struggling in a low calorie diet. And every time we're over here trying to manipulate this system, we are only finding ourselves suffering and not being able to sustain those results, which is why I think the fasting movement took off, is all of a sudden people were like, wait a second, over here, there's a whole nother level of health I never knew was possible and I could never accomplish when I was focused on just the foods I was eating.
So let me ask then, so I've done a fair amount of fasting. I intermittent fast 365 days a year, which you may tell me is actually not ideal. Yeah. I vary the length. So on the weekends, it's going to be maybe 14-ish hours, but during the week, it's, 18, 19 hours. But if I'm just doing caloric restriction, so I'll paint a picture. I used to be 60 pounds heavier. And over 2 years, I dieted down and I did what I'll call rabbit starvation. So I was eating virtually no fat, virtually no carbohydrate. It was just literally boiled chicken breasts and steamed broccoli. I mean, that was basically my life for 2 years. And it was miserable.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Really miserable. It was still super inflammatory. But I didn't understand any of that while I was doing it. And now I can control my weight so much easier through fasting. Yeah. So, but why? Why would it be that keeping my calories, and I was at about 1,500, which is why I made a point of saying that's really low because that was painful for 2 years. Why would that be so deeply unpleasant? Whereas even doing a punctuated 24, like if I had to redo it all, even just doing a 24-hour fast once a week probably would have led me to roughly the same results.
Absolutely.
So and I actually don't know the answer to this. Why was one so unpleasant and the other so manageable? Because if I'm burning fat, I must be in ketosis, right?
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. I mean, it would have been interesting back then to put a ketone reader on you, to measure it and see where you're at.
Yeah.
When in that example, what was happening is you were bringing your blood sugar down and then up, and then it would go down. And when it would go down, if you ate again, it would go back up and then it would go down.
Even though I was just eating chicken breast and broccoli.
Oh yeah. Well, broccoli, it's got glucose in it, as does chicken. And to your point, protein will elevate your blood sugar, but you're just going up and down within one system. And again, it would have been really interesting to know your ketone levels, because once you click over and you're making ketones, what ketones do is they turn off the hunger hormone. And then they also sharpen the brain. And when you think about that, why would the body do that? I mean, this is the way my brain thinks is I always go into what is the body trying to do? Well, back in the primal days, when we had to go hunt for food, we needed this alternative fuel source to power us up so that we could go and find food. So when you're burning fat and you're getting this ketone rush, hunger gets turned off, mental clarity becomes very, very focused, and your muscles start to power up, and you become a hunting machine because you're supposed to go find food for your survival. So now in this day and age, we don't have that. We can stay on the couch and get onto our phone and just have DoorDash bring us food, and we don't ever have to leave the sugar burner system. But if we don't, then we never get the healing that's over there. We never get the performance angle that's over there. So on what I would say is, in your example, even though it was low glucose, you weren't raising your glucose, you were probably not getting as much of the ketone rush that you could have used if you had just taken that same diet and compressed it into maybe an 8 to 10 hour eating window. Now that diet would have probably worked better for you because you would have clicked over into ketosis and felt amazing.
It's so interesting. And you're right. I wish I had when I'm really tracking this, I do finger pricks like constantly. Also, I'll wear a continuous glucose monitor, but they didn't exist at least easily back then.
Yeah.
But now, so I didn't know about ketosis when I was doing this. So I can't swear, but now that I know ketosis, I can feel it.
Yeah,
I know when I click over. Like I can guess when I hit about 0.5, I can tell you I'm at about 0.5. When I hit 1, I can get pretty close. I'm usually within like 0.2 of where I'm at, which is pretty trippy when you think about how it's like, oh, I know this feeling. Yep, cool. I'm in ketosis. I'm going to guarantee this is like a 0.5 to a 0.7, or this is a 1 to a 1.2. I'm somewhere around there. As it goes higher than that, I can't really track. So anyway, I bring that up because when I was doing rabbit starvation, I never felt that, am I going to call it a sense of relief? I never felt that like I'm okay here. It was 2 years of misery to the point where my wife at the end of it pulled me aside and was like, you don't have a personality. And it was because I was just grumpy all the time. And there's no sort of joy in Mudville, which is what, when you originally said, like, you know, there's some playfulness to all this. And I was like, not back then.
Yeah.
There was no playfulness.
Yeah.
It was horrendous.
Yeah.
And so when I think about people trying to get into this, I imagine if they've ever missed a meal and they're so annoyed and so frustrated, they can't grapple with, no, there's really, when you click over into fat metabolism, it really does feel very, very different.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's talk about people then that can't imagine that. How do you help them cross the chasm? We were talking about this before we started rolling. You love somebody. They think fasting is dangerous. Let's start with that.
Well, the fasting is dangerous piece is the first thing is you need to get caught up on the current science, because the current science is mind-blowing. And in the book, I put 6 different lengths out that were all based off science. But one of the easiest one to kind of wrap your head around is what we call 16-8, where they show that if you take all the let's say you don't work on your food, you're just going to eat the standard Western diet, highly inflammatory, but you eat it in an 8-hour eating window, leaving along this 16-hour period where you're not eating, you are literally metabolically immune from insulin going up, glucose going up, high blood pressure, liver damage, cholesterol. You become immune from the damages that high inflammatory diet has. Okay, that alone is mind-blowing to me, because let's say you're listening to this and you're like, well, I don't really want to change my food. I've got food addiction issues, and I've worked with a lot of people with food addiction that we've been able to help them overcome it by learning how to fast. If you just start to tiptoe your way in, like I'm just saying, you can, let's say you're like listening to this, you're like, I'm not doing the food changes. Okay. So could I just get you to push your breakfast back a half hour?
Okay, myth number 1. Calories matter. If you are still counting calories to lose weight, I'm going to tell you stop, because you are only going to drive yourself crazy. When we start restricting calories, what we do is we change our set point. I always use this example. If you find that you are eating only 1,500 calories a day and you are exercising 500 and burning 500 calories a day, that is a delta of 1,000 calories. What happens is, in order to keep your weight at where you want it or to lose weight, you have to keep doing 1,000 calories or less. That makes no sense. Over time, what are you going to eventually have to keep lowering your set point and lowering your set point? You can't be at like 200 calories. It is crazy making, and we have to clear it from our mind. So if calories don't matter, then what matters? And it is 2 things. 1, blood sugar matters. A, start checking your blood sugar. That's the first thing I want to tell you. But B, when you look at your blood sugar, I am a huge fan of a continuous glucose monitor. I have one on right now. I wear this I used to wear it twice a year. Now I'm wearing it like every few months just to see where my blood sugar levels are at. When you look at a blood sugar chart throughout your day, like you can see a customized one with a continuous glucose monitor, when those spikes are going up and down multiple times throughout a day, that means your body is having to release insulin to take care of those spikes, to take that glucose and put it into a cell. But at the root of what insulin resistance is it's too much secretion of insulin, too many spikes. So the name of the blood sugar game is less of these spikes. We want our blood sugar to be even throughout the day, maybe 1 or 2 spikes, so that you don't have to make as much insulin. If you are not making as much insulin, you will not be building a body that's moving towards insulin resistance. If you're not insulin resistant, you will not struggle to lose weight. It's literally that simple. So stop counting the calories, start looking at your blood sugar. Second part of that is that your microbiome matters. This is why I'm such a fan of Balance. I put Balance, just one of these capsules, or they have little packs. I'll open up a capsule, open up the pack, and I'll put it in my water in my fasting window. What we're seeing from just watching so many people fast and from looking at the research is that a lot of times we are hungry not because our blood sugar demands it or our human cells demand it, because our microbiome in our gut is saying, hey, feed me. So you can feed it Balance, put it in some water, drink it in your fasting window, and now those microbes won't give you hunger signals and allow you to fast longer. Like those two, I wish you could understand the power of the two things that I just taught you. Just get rid of those calories, bring in these 2 hacks, and you will see a dramatic shift right there in your weight loss efforts. Okay, myth number 2. Diet foods help you lose weight. They don't. In fact, most diet foods have harmful chemicals in it, and chemicals make you fat and they block your weight loss effort. They also make it hard for you to metabolically shift if that's what you're trying to do. So this is a well-known fact. This is why you all, when you ask me about like, can I drink Diet Coke in my fasting window? I'm like, no, NutraSweet makes you fat. I know it says Diet Coke on there, but NutraSweet will make you hold on to weight because it falls under a category called an obesogen. And these toxins that are obesogen, they block the receptor site for insulin. So you're over here trying to fast and do keto and fast like a girl, like I've taught you all, and you're really working on your blood sugar. But when you bring these diet foods in, what ends up happening is those chemicals make you insulin resistant. So you're working against yourself. So let's get rid of the diet foods. I'm such a fan of fasting and good quality food that nature provided you. Maybe a food that even doesn't have a label. I will tell you that most of the foods I eat throughout my day don't have labels. They're fruits, vegetables, and meats. That's the majority of what I eat. The minute it has a label, now I got to understand what those ingredients are. And many of those ingredients, especially the diet food ones, are going to be toxic and are going to be an obesogen, and they're going to make you fat, and you're going to struggle to get into this fat burning state that I've worked so hard to teach you all. You've worked so hard to get yourself there. Okay, so that's number 2. Okay, oh my God, this one's so good. Number 3. Oh my God, I've been waiting to talk to you all about this. Weight loss drugs do not work long term. And you all know the drug I'm talking about that everybody is obsessed with right now, and it's Ozempic. I get that a lot of people are seeing when they look in the mirror that they're losing weight with Ozempic. I get that people see the number on the scale changing. But we have to remember when we're looking at weight loss, it's not just fat that builds up your body to look bigger or to change the number on the scale. It's also muscle. And what Ozempic is doing is it's breaking down muscle. So yes, you fit into your clothes different. Yes, the scale changes, but at the expense of your muscle. This is why you hear people talking about the Ozempic face,
whereas people are starting to look older, it's because they're breaking muscle down. But here's the problem with breaking muscle down. Your muscle, the more muscle you have, the more insulin receptor sites you have. It is in the muscle that you create these insulin receptor sites to be able to pull glucose into the muscle so that you can use that muscle. If you break muscle down, you lose those receptor sites. Second part of breaking muscle down is the more muscle you have, the faster your metabolism is. So your body has to turn up the heat because it has more muscle, which is a more efficient type of tissue in your body. So losing muscle is no good. We want to keep muscle. So please, those of you that are on Ozempic, I really want you to rethink about this because we don't want you to lose muscle. And those of you considering it, I really want to teach you that this is a slippery slope we need to be careful of. Muscle, muscle, muscle is so important for weight loss. It is so important as an anti-aging tool. I can't say enough about it. Okay, number 4. Oh my God, this may be my favorite video. I'm not lying. Number 4, doing more cardio is going to help you lose weight. Wrong. That is a total myth. So remember that cardio falls into this category of, oh, I do cardio to burn more calories. But remember, it's going to change your set point if all you're doing is cardio. But the other problem, especially with people who do too much cardio, is that it starts to break muscle down and it raises up cortisol. So we've already talked about what happens when you break muscle down. But when we bring cortisol up, you become more insulin resistant. So think about the difference between like somebody who does yoga all the time, or let's say, I'm going to throw out my favorite sport. Think about the difference between a tennis player and a marathon runner. A marathon runner is pushing nonstop that cortisol machine. Cortisol's up, calories are being burned, muscle is being broken down. What does a marathoner look like? They're very lean. Whereas a tennis player is doing short spurts of cardio activity, more like a HIIT training. And there's a lot of squats and there's a lot of, movement with the serve. You're having to use more muscle. So a tennis player's body doesn't look as thin because it, for that sport, needs to have more muscle. So when we are chronically doing cardio just to burn calories, we are actually doing the opposite. We are making it harder for our body to lose weight and we are losing muscle. No bueno. I don't like that. And you shouldn't want that either. So I personally do cardio for my mental health. I do it for the endorphin rush. I do it to get out into nature, but I don't do it to lose weight. I've started looking at HIIT training and muscle building as my weight loss tool, knowing that more muscle I have, the more insulin sensitive I will be, and then pairing that with the other strategies I just taught you. Okay, last one. Don't go anywhere because this one's good too. Number 5, throw away your scale. Your scale tells you nothing. It's a big fat liar. And every time we hop on that scale, we either are like, woo, that's amazing, or we're like, okay, what's going on? And we orchestrate our whole day around it for so many years. I would get up in the morning, I would pop on the scale, and I would decide based off of what that number said if I was having a good day or a bad day. I knew that a certain number on the scale meant, oh, that was my high school weight. That was my college weight. I had so much emotional baggage around what that number said. And the minute, one day, my scale literally broke. And I was like, okay, I'm not going to replace it. I'm going to see if I can just enjoy living in my body. And that was the day I freed myself. So please stop judging your quality of who you are as a human, the quality of your health, the quality of your day by that number on the scale. A way better measurement is to make sure that you have a continuous glucose monitor. That's what's going to give you all the accurate information as to if you're able to lose weight, if you're moving towards health, and what your lifestyle habits are doing for you. Don't let the scale determine your self-worth.
So, first question for you is weight gain inevitable as we get older?
Oh, that's such a deep question, because on one hand, I want to say it is inevitable if you don't know the formula for making sure that you don't gain belly fat and weight. There's a formula, and especially for women. So if you're just living the traditional life and you've been doing the calorie in, calorie out routine, and you think it's about exercising more, eating less, yes, you will gain weight as you age. But what I'm asking people to do is to look at this through the hormonal lens. And with women, what we see is that as estrogen goes down, you become more insulin resistant. So estrogen starts going down in our early 40s. And all of a sudden, the diet you did at 35 doesn't work for you at 43 or 44. So you have to start to make a change. And if you do, then weight gain is not going to be in your cards. But if you're not willing to look at a lifestyle shift through those perimenopausal, menopausal years, then you're going to gain weight because your whole hormonal profile changes.
You mentioned 2 hormones there that people may not be familiar with, or they may not fully understand them, estrogen, but also you mentioned a term called insulin resistance.
Yes.
Could you just explain, first of all, what insulin resistance is?
Yep. And
then, I guess, expand on what estrogen is.
Yeah, so insulin is the hormone that drives glucose into the cells. So I think of it as like an escort. It's like you eat a meal, you get a bunch of glucose, and then your brilliant body will make insulin, and then the insulin will come along to the glucose and say, hey, okay, let's get you in the cell so that we can put you to use. When we're insulin resistant, that system doesn't work. And so there's 2, the basic principle of that is that the opening for glucose to go into the cell via the escort of insulin is clogged. So you can't get either glucose or insulin into the cell. So what ends up happening is your body has to store it somewhere. So it stores it as fat. And that's insulin resistance in the most basic sense that I can really picture it in my mind, is that it's a chemical reaction that is not working properly. And so when it doesn't work properly, your body will store insulin, the hormone, glucose, the molecule, as fat.
Yeah. Well, let's come to estrogen in just a minute, because I think what you just said there about insulin resistance is really interesting. So I spoke to Dr. William Lee a few months ago on this podcast, and he was sharing with me some research he came across. Now, to be clear, I don't know if this was research in men or in women. I know a lot of research is biased because it's done in men.
Yeah.
And, for many years now, I think we've finally getting this understanding that we just can't extrapolate that research to women. But one thing he told me is that between the ages of 20 and 60, our metabolism is rock solid. He said it doesn't change. Whereas we think our metabolism slows down. And he said the research shows, certainly the research he was sharing with me, is that actually, no, our metabolism is the same. But because of our lifestyles and how busy modern life is, we put on fat, we put on visceral fat, and that visceral fat is what slows our metabolism down, not the other way around. So I found that really empowering to say, okay, it's not an inevitability that we're going to put on weight as we get older, but how does that fit in perhaps with what you just said, which is, because men don't go through that huge hormonal change like women do in their 40s, right? You're saying that as estrogen starts to go down, women naturally become more insulin resistant. So do you think that fits alongside with what Dr. William Lee said?
Yeah, I would love to see the study because I bet it wasn't done on women. And it probably wasn't done on menopausal women or perimenopausal women. So this is the part of the conversation I want to start to pull out, is we need to study women by ourselves, and we need to study women going through perimenopause and menopause. So I'm not discrediting anything that he's saying. I'm asking the world, can we just start to study women in isolation so we know more specifically? So that's what my response to the study would be. Now, the way my brain thinks this through. So we have 3 forms of estrogen. Estradiol is the major, most powerful form of estrogen that has been coming into a woman's body since the first day of puberty. That is the version of estrogen that leaves starting around 40. And if you look at the human body, there are receptor sites for estradiol on every major organ, cardiovascular system, within our gut, on our brain, in our kidneys. So you are losing a major hormone that has been activating all these processes in your body, including metabolic ones. You are losing that hormone, which is making you not process the glucose as efficiently. And that's what we need to study, because I can put you in a room of hundreds of thousands of women that will all raise their hand and tell you, at 40, I just couldn't lose weight anymore. And it's because you lost this powerful form of estrogen. And she was helping every system in your body. And now she's gone, and every system's starting to have issues now.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting as I reflect on that, I think what you're saying could fit completely alongside what Dr. Lee is saying, actually, because he was simply saying that metabolism is the same, right? So let's just assume that's correct for a minute. So let's say a woman's metabolism is the same as they're going into their 40s. It could be that their estrogen is going down. They're becoming resistant to one of the most important hormones in our body, insulin, which is going to drive weight gain if we're still doing the same things.
That's right.
The things that women could do in their 30s when, let's say, they're more insulin sensitive, as they go into their 40s and they become more insulin resistant, that could be driving the weight gain as opposed to metabolism changing. So I actually think it could fit alongside what Dr. Lee's saying.
For sure. I mean, this is where we got to get everybody in one room and like have a big discussion. Or you listen to a podcast like this and share it out and open up the discussion, because we don't have the research yet.
Yeah.
So we've got to have discussions like this, and we've got to let women express themselves and share, like, yeah, it's tough going through perimenopause and menopause. All the tricks aren't working anymore.
Yeah.
But we don't have a society that allows women to say that. So everything is sort of done at ladies' night and you know, at the gym and on walks, and everybody's sharing stories there. So why can't we bring this to the research forefront? And then the other thing I want to bring up, which is another nuance here, is that we lose progesterone starting at 35. Now, progesterone calms us. So when we get into our 40s, now all of a sudden we don't have this hormone that was stimulating things like GABA, which is a neurotransmitter that calms us. We react to stress much more acutely. And that reaction to stress creates a cortisol surge. And cortisol, when you have too much of it, is going right to your belly. So we have a double whammy. We have estradiol going down, making you more insulin resistant, and we have progesterone going down, destroying your ability to handle stress, making cortisol go up. And there you go. Now you've got menopausal belly weight because cortisol's up and you're insulin resistant. And really it was because these two hormones were exiting.
Yeah. I mean, no wonder so many women find it tough at that age.
That's right.
And you called it a double whammy. We can even call that a triple whammy and go, yes, estrogen's going down, making you more insulin resistant. Progesterone's going down, meaning you don't have that calming effect anymore.
Yep.
But then many women are living in a culture, a societal construct in many ways that actually has not really paid attention to women's needs and how they change throughout a 28-day cycle.
Yep.
Of course, it's not always just 28 days, but doesn't really pay attention to a woman's needs through their cycle, but maybe also doesn't pay attention or as much attention as it should to their needs throughout their lifetime.
Yeah. You know, I read a statistic the other day that women, depending on how long you live, will spend 40% of their life in menopause. 40% of their life will be without these hormones. Why aren't we studying this? Why aren't we creating a culture that can talk about this? Why aren't we helping women understand this? And that's the thing that I'm trying to bring to the world is like, if we just could talk about it, we could all come up with some solutions. Yeah. But instead, what's happening is the 45-year-old woman is trying harder at weight loss. She's working out harder. She's dieting more, trying to get this result that she got at 35, but she's not looking at it through a hormonal lens. And the minute you flip the whole discussion on its head head the minute you start to look at it through a hormonal lens. And now that woman can start to get some serious weight loss results when she comes at it from hormones, not from grit and discipline.
So we're saying it's not inevitable. It's just harder for women as they go into their 40s, unless they start making some changes.
Yeah.
You've also mentioned the relationship there between stress, increased levels of the stress hormone cortisol, and belly fats.
Yeah.
Now, one big source of stress for all of us, men and women alike, is a lack of sleep.
Oh, yeah.
So what's the relationship between a lack of sleep and belly fats?
Yeah, so this is where it gets really dark. So hang with us as we go through this, because whenever I really explain like what's going on for a woman as over 40, it's a bit depressing because she can't sleep. She's struggling to sleep. So because progesterone was the hormone that helped her sleep. So when progesterone goes away, now she's waking up in the middle of the night. She can't fall asleep. So I think we do a disservice when we go out publicly and we're like, hey, weight loss and sleep, you got to sleep so that you can lose weight. Again, we're leaving the perimenopause and menopausal woman out of the conversation. She's trying. She's tossing and turning, trying to sleep. But she can't because she lost progesterone. And progesterone was that hormone that helped her get into that restful sleep. So again, we have to come up with another set of hacks, another set of tools for her that are going to be different than a younger woman or even a man. But yeah, I mean, you burn fat when you sleep. Your brain detoxifies when you sleep. You reorganize information when you sleep. All your organ systems will repair. Your liver dumps blood sugar when you sleep. There's so much magic to sleep. We just got to help that woman fall asleep.
Okay, so first of all, we don't want women who used to be able to sleep well and now are struggling to sleep. We don't want them to feel bad. And I think what you've just said is really quite empowering, because it's like, no. Yes, you used to sleep well in your 20s and 30s, but there may be a hormonal reason why you're not sleeping as well in your 40s.
That's right.
But what are they meant to do? I mean, you say we need some different hacks.
Yeah.
What are some of your top tips then for women to get better sleep?
It's a great question. So I think we have to reset ourselves to the circadian rhythm. So I'm a real big fan of women getting up close to sunrise. So you're seeing that red light, even just if you could get outside, if it's a sunny day, and just sort of get that red hue. What it will do is it will turn melatonin off, which is the hormone that helps us sleep. And it starts your circadian rhythm. It will bring you back into a more insulin sensitive place. And then about an hour after you get up, you're going to get some cortisol because your eyes registered light, that red morning light. Mm-hmm. And so once cortisol kicks in about an hour later, go move your body. So you got to get up and walk. You got to get up and work out so that you can use that cortisol, not store that cortisol. Then the second thing I think that women have to do is these are little simple things that you can build into your lifestyle. You got to go out in the sun midday without sunglasses on and let the receptors in your eyes see in the daytime. So we got to be able to see that it's midday. And then at night, when the sunset happens, can you, even sit in a chair and look out using light to really help train that circadian rhythm? Now, the other thing I would say is for the perimenopausal and menopausal woman, timing a dinner is really, really important. If you're eating dinner in the dark, when melatonin goes up, you're going to be more insulin resistant.
Yeah.
And if you go to bed when you are in that, as your body is digesting food, you are not going to sleep as well. I mean, I can tell you, I've looked at it on my Oura Ring over and over again. Like the minute I go to bed late, eat a late dinner and sleep, I don't get the same. So we've got to go back to simple things that women might not be doing. And the book, The Menopause Reset, we reissued that with a sleep chapter.
Oh, wow.
And I just put all my sleep hacks in there. So that for perimenopause and menopausal women, there's a lot like, keeping the room cold. That's really important because as estrogen goes down, it signals to turn up the heat in your brain. Weighted blankets become really helpful for perimenopause and menopausal women. Like there's a whole sleep strategy.
What's the evolutionary case for a weighted blanket?
Yeah, I think I had a really interesting discussion with a woman who's a sleep expert, and we came up with this thought. Now, I have no proof, but we are so primally driven. What happened in the cave person day? We used cowhide or animal hide on top of us to sleep, and we slept on a cold ground. We didn't have mattresses. So our body is primed for when it gets cold, all of a sudden we get into more of a parasympathetic state. When you have a heavy blanket on you, again, same thing, going more into parasympathetic. Now, if you go back to what progesterone did, progesterone helped you access that calming part of your nervous system. So now she's gone or going away. So when you get in bed, we got to do everything we can to activate that parasympathetic system. And that's where a cold mattress, a dark room, a weighted blanket, all of those things now start to prime your parasympathetic nervous system.
Yeah, I mean, I've also seen so many patients do well with weighted blankets.
Yeah.
So many kids
do
really well. And it's really interesting to hear that potential evolutionary perspective. It sort of makes sense, doesn't it? Why would it not be the case?
Yeah.
Okay, check this out. I have a free fasting guide for you all. It's free. And it's going to teach you all the basics of fasting. It's going to teach you how to kill hunger when you fast, which is really cool. And it's going to show you how to break your fast, among many other things. All you got to do is click on this link right here and enjoy. Let's talk about what causes a woman to gain weight throughout menopause. I mean, and some days I sit with my menopausal friends and, there's this moment of like, what is going on? What was that? Like, I was just going along my life. All of a sudden, my brain wasn't working. My joy went down. I started gaining weight. I'm not sleeping. Honestly, if you have a menopausal woman in your life, give her a hug and give her some grace because we're trying to understand ourselves. It's quite a process. But when it comes to weight loss, what I want you to know is that as estrogen goes down, you become more insulin resistant. So the diet you did at 45 is going to store more fat than if you did that same diet at 25 or 35. So this is why we've got to start looking at fasting more. And for my menopausal women, I wrote about this in the Menopause Reset. I even made it an easy read. You can pick this thing up and read it in within a day and apply it. And I show you how to vary fast and vary foods so that you can unstick that insulin resistance, because there's insulin resistance and then there's insulin resistance for the menopausal woman. Second thing that I want you to think about is belly fat. So with belly fat, I know it's the least favorite part of fat. I mean, it's not like we like fat at all, but belly fat is the one that's like, especially if you're like trying to get the rest of your body going, and belly fat in menopausal women can have a bloated feeling to it. So here's what I want you to realize is that just like I say all the time that all fat is excess. What menopausal body fat is excess estrogen and excess cortisol. Okay, once we got that clear, what can we do to get rid of excess estrogen and excess cortisol? So the first thing we can do is let's clear the estrogen. Get it out of your system. So if you're perimenopausal and you still have a period and you're getting that spike, usually around day, 12, 13, you're going to get a release of an egg, which is when estrogen peaks, and then now estrogen has to clear out of your system. And so it's got to go out through your stools. It'll go into your circulation, and if your detox pathways are shut, it'll stay in your belly and creates that bloatedness. So the first thing is let's work with the detox pathway of the gut. And we can do that simply by eating more leafy green. If you got away with less greens in your 30s, you don't get away with less greens in your 40s, 50s, and beyond. So up your greens, more salads is going to help you clear that estrogen. The other interesting part about estrogen, clearing estrogen, is you might need to skip the alcohol because your liver is breaking down estrogen along with a lot of other things. But when we have a glass of wine, which I get it, a glass of wine calms that menopausal agitation. But if we're doing it too much, what happens is the liver prioritizes processing the alcohol and not breaking estrogen down. So you might need to get rid of the alcohol to get your body to lose that weight. The other thing that I want to point out is that we do have some hacks for opening up the digestive system, opening up your liver. Castor oil packs are one of my favorite hacks. You just put it right over your abdomen. You can put it over your liver, and you just go at night, put it on. It needs to be on for about 2 hours. Make sure the castor oil is organic. But that can be a real powerful way to mobilize some of that toxic estrogen that gets stuck. I personally love to put a little activated charcoal if I'm going to do a castor oil pack at night. I love activated charcoal to make sure that something's binding to the release of estrogen that's happening inside my microbiome as I'm sleeping. So we can really look at that belly fat as just accumulation of estrogen. Let's mobilize her. So those are some of my tips there. The other thing that we know about belly fat is that it's cortisol. And so remember that when we have too much cortisol, what we need to do is go move. So when you end up having a lot of stressful moments, if you're a menopausal woman and you're dealing with that belly fat, when stress hits, move. Do not sit. Move. And might have to move 5-6 times. I literally walk around my neighborhood often, 6-7 times a day, and it's not always long. Sometimes it's like I go out the door and I just let me go around the block, and then I go back in and I go back to work. So move your body. If you don't have a place you can go safely walk, do air squats. I've talked about that here, where you're just squatting up and down. You just gotta move glucose, move cholesterol so it doesn't stick in you, and it's most important to do it after a meal and after you've had a stressful situation. Okay, the third issue with menopausal weight gain that I see a lot is losing muscle. Now, this is interesting because I think what happens is that a lot of times we lose muscle, but we don't notice because we're so focused on getting rid of the accumulating fat areas. But maybe the accumulating fat areas are because we lost muscle. You have to fight for muscle after 40. And what's interesting is that after about 35, 40, as your ovaries start to go into retirement, what the body will do is it'll hand over the job of sex hormone making to your adrenal gland. And if your adrenals are really overtaxed, they have to pull nutrients from somewhere. So what your adrenals will do is they will start to break down muscle to get their requirements so that they can make you sex hormones. So you break muscle down. Now, the problem with that, you might like what your number says on your scale. You might like that your clothes fit a little looser, but you need muscle as you move through menopause, because in muscle is more insulin receptor sites. The more muscle you have, the more insulin receptor sites you are going to have. So the name of the menopausal weight loss game is build more muscle. You'll have more ability when glucose comes in. Remember, you're more insulin resistant. So when all of a sudden glucose comes in, we have more receptor sites for insulin to shove glucose into so it doesn't store it as fat. So let's make sure we're building muscle. The other way to build muscle outside of strength training is eating more protein. 20-30 grams every meal is going to help to build up muscle. It's going to help to create more of these insulin receptor sites. So to me, for menopausal women, muscle building has two arms to it. You have the arm of making sure that you're actually strengthening those muscles, and then you have the arm of making sure you're eating enough protein. And when you do that, now your belly fat goes away, the hip fat goes away. You start to see that the fat drops off of you. That's how important muscle is. Okay, number 4. This is one that I see a lot. I experienced myself, and that is this feeling of I just don't feel like working out anymore. A lot of us experience this as we go through menopause, and if you experience it, put it in the comments, because I want people to know that this is a normal situation as we go, especially through our perimenopausal year. And this is tied to a sex hormone called testosterone. Your testosterone is your motivation and drive hormone. It's what makes you want to go and work out. And the precursor to testosterone is a nutrient steroid called DHEA. And DHEA makes cortisol, it makes progesterone, and it makes testosterone. So if you're under a lot of stress, then all that DHEA goes to cortisol. It'll go to progesterone next, and it'll go to testosterone last. So I started to notice this in my own life around 46, 47. I just stopped craving working out, and it's bummed me out. I've been a competitive athlete my whole life. Exercise was my drug of choice, but I didn't crave it. And so I ran a Dutch test on myself. I looked at my hormones, and I saw how low that testosterone was. I saw how low my DHEA was, and it got me thinking about balancing my life a little bit more, creating less stress, but also supplementing in with DHEA. And some of you may choose to supplement or go down the bioidentical route with testosterone. Just make sure you work closely with a practitioner that's used to bioidenticals. But bringing testosterone back up isn't, for the menopausal woman, isn't just about libido. It is about your desire to work out. And I can tell you, as I worked with my DHEA, I worked with my testosterone levels, I actually crave working out at 53 a lot more than I craved working out at 48. And that's because I understood the principles of what gave me that desire to work out. Okay, and then the last one that I have here for you is one that I know happens a lot, happened to me, shocked me, and that is the back of the arm fat. Now, I'm full transparency. I remember like in my mid-40s turning and looking like seeing my reflection in the mirror on a car and being like, whoa, what is going on with the back of my arm? It was like all of a sudden I could feel like cellulite coming in over there, and it was like overnight. So I've done a whole video on back of the arms because for my own desire, I was like trying to figure this out. And the first thing that I want you to do is when we look at the back of the arms, where fat tends to accumulate, yes, it can be the loss of muscle, but a lot of times cellulite is just toxins. It's just excess again. It's just excess stored there. So let's mobilize the toxins. So the first way to mobilize toxins is to minimize toxins. Look at your beauty products. Look at your plastic bottles. Look at your toxic load. I've done a lot of videos on that. I talk a ton about, I put list after list of toxins in the menopause reset. So look at your toxic influx and let's start to minimize that. Second thing is it may be time to detox. Fasting is a light detox. We've got infrared saunas. We've got opening up detox pathways. I've done videos on a lot of videos on detox. I'm sure my team will put some of those videos in here for you to benefit from. But it might be time to start to mobilize those toxins. And the last thing I'm going to say on this, on the back of the arm fat, is that something that I noticed works really well is autophagy fast. And let's talk about what autophagy fasting is and why it works so well. And one of the reasons is autophagy, the term autophagy, is an inner sensor inside the cell that senses that nutrients have gone down and that glucose has gone down. And so there's no influx of nutrients into the cellular part. So you need like CoQ10, you need B vitamins, things like that to power up your mitochondria, and you need glucose to power up your mitochondria. But if the little inner doctor inside your cells doesn't sense that you're getting nutrients or glucose, then it actually will go into this autophagy state, which is a beautiful state. And it looks around the cell and it's like, hey, you, endoplasmic reticulum, you are not working right. I'm gonna have to come on over here and clean you up a little bit more. Hey, mitochondria, the outside of your membrane is congested with toxins. I need to go in there and clean that up. Sometimes the intelligence even looks around and goes, okay, hot mess in here. This is not a good cell. Let's go ahead and kill this cell and get rid of it, and let's replace it with a healthier version. It's crazy when you look at the intelligence inside these cells. So with that in mind, when we go into autophagy fasting, I wrote about autophagy fasting. It's my favorite type of fasting in Fast Like a Girl, so go grab that book. But with autophagy fasting, what we're doing is we're getting these toxins out, we're getting new cells, and you'll start to see a lot of the fat, a lot of the cellulite that you don't like starts to clear up because of the power of autophagy. That's how powerful you are designed. So if you are struggling to lose your menopausal weight, I really cannot say enough that it's so important that you understand that there was a hormonal transition that happened and perhaps you didn't get the memo. I see this all the time with menopausal women. It's like, I don't know why this is happening to me. This is what I'm trying to stop. This is why I'm writing books on hormones and I'm doing these videos to like stop the cultural ignorance. After 40, hormones change, which makes your whole body change, which causes you to gain weight. It's not because you're undisciplined. It's not because you were cursed with poor genetics. There was a hormonal shift that was going on that you didn't get the memo about, and now it's causing you to gain weight. So let's start to unwind it. And that is what I'm showing you here in this video. Okay. So first thing, we got to sort of establish some ground rules here. The first thing is I want you to understand that one round of antibiotics destroys 90% of the bacteria in your gut. This is a huge problem because you have around 4,000 different species of bacteria in your gut that are doing lots of different functions for you. And one of the things that these species do, these bacteria do, is they regulate blood sugar. So those of you that are trying to figure out how to get your blood sugar down, you're trying to get into ketosis, you're trying to lose weight, and you're like banging your head against the wall, not sure what's going on, I want you to realize that the number one name of the game is to improve your gut diversity. You want to take these 4,000 species that you have, you want to feed them and magnify them so that they not only bring your blood sugar down, but they'll break down hormones, they'll bring inflammation down, they'll support your immune system, they'll make neurotransmitters for your brain. There's a whole bunch of benefits that these microbes give you. So the research is showing if I take somebody who is obese and somebody who is lean, that one of the number one factors of somebody holding on to weight is they do not have enough diversity of their gut microbiome. So the first thing that we've got to make the connection to is we've got to understand that this diversity matters. And when you go on a round of antibiotics, you kill that diversity. Now, I'm going to talk at the end of this how fasting can help bring that diversity back. And I'm going to talk about the hours that it takes, how many fasting hours it takes to bring the diversity back. So stick with me here. Okay, second thing that happens when we are holding on to weight and we are not managing blood sugar well is that we don't have good microbial geography. Whoa, what is this? Okay, this I ended up going down a rabbit hole of research on today. And here's the deal. You've got this thin layer of mucosal membrane on the inside of your large and small intestine. And when the microbes are right up against that mucosal membrane, sitting right on there, they're actually not as efficient at regulating your blood sugar. They do better if the microbes are dispersed and throughout your gut and they're a little bit away from the mucosal membrane. It's something called microbial geography. Dr. Emran Mayer, I interviewed him on my Resetter podcast. He's the one that's talking a lot about it. He has a fabulous book that came out this year called The Gut Immune Connection. But one of the key factors that we know is if you want to regulate blood sugar, you got to get those microbes off of that mucosal lining, and fasting can do it. Third thing, this one I love to talk about in my academy with my academy members all the time, which is your FB switch. And the FB switch basically says if you have too much of the Firmicutes bacteria, which is a big group of bacteria in your gut, if you have more Firmicutes than Bacteroides, you are going to store your calories more as fat. So you want to flip that so you bring Bacteroides up and you get yourself in a balanced FB ratio so that you stop storing calories as fat. The way that this looks is if I, again, took two versions of you, one that had a good FB switch, one that didn't have a good FB switch, and I put this one that had a good one, I could feed you, let's say, a bowl of pasta, and you wouldn't store that as calories. But the version of you that had the bad FB switch, if I fed that person a bowl of pasta, you would store it all as calories. This is a huge reason why we see that some people eat whatever they want and they stay skinny, and other people eat just, one carrot and they start to gain weight. This FB switch matters, and fasting can get that FB switch in its proper spot. Okay, last thing, I've talked about this one a lot. We know that about a 24-hour fast will improve your intestinal stem cells. It will reboot stem cells. And these stem cells, what they will do is they will go into that mucosal lining and they'll start to repair things like a leaky gut. So I had a great interview with Dr. Stephen Gundry on my Resetter podcast. He talked a lot about how leaky gut is the number one cause of energy depletion, of people feeling fatigued. He also talked about how one round of antibiotics will really accelerate weight gain. So it's a fascinating podcast. I'll put the link in the comment or in the notes. But what we know is your mucosal lining of your gut, we can't have it be open. We need tight junctions so toxins don't get into your bloodstream. Remember, when toxins get into your bloodstream, your liver doesn't really know what to do with that, so it sends those toxins onto fat, and it stores it as fat. So we want to make sure that that mucosal lining of your intestinal tract is shut and that you're not getting those toxins into your bloodstream. So these are the 4 gut changes, microbiome changes that happen after antibiotics. They also happen after eating bad Western diet foods. They also happen in a stressful life. So there's a lot of things that we can point fingers at that change this. It's not just antibiotics. But what I want you to know is that fasting changes at each one of these 4 things. And here's the length fast that the research is showing. There are 3 different fasts that will change these, okay? First is your 24-hour fast. This would be your 1 meal a day where you're eating just dinner, and maybe you eat dinner 6 o'clock on Monday night, and then you don't eat dinner again till 6 o'clock on Tuesday night. So you would fast all day. That would be an example of a 24-hour fast that will help stem cell production. Okay, the other fast that is really has a lot of research on is what we call the alternative day fast. This is where you literally eat whatever you want one day, and then the next day you don't eat at all. So sun up to sundown, nothing, like even nothing that day at all. Then the next day you eat whatever you want, and then the next day you fast. That style of fasting is showing to improve microbial diversity. It's showing to change the microbial geography, and it starts to flip the Firmicutes and Bacteroides switch. Third fast, and I talked about this one before. Research is showing that longer fasts, like a 5-day water fast, if you do a 5-day water fast before any diet change, you get a more lasting result with that diet change. And the reason that that happens is because of all 4 of these, but primarily because it flips that FB switch. So really cool article or study that I highlighted maybe 6 months ago, showing that if you just set yourself up with a fast before you go into a diet change, you'll get a lot more bang for your buck out of that diet change. In the study that I show you guys, I'll leave a link to that video in the notes. They actually did the DASH diet. That was the diet that they did before the 5-day water fast. So you got 3 options there. If you're listening to this and you're like, oh my God, I've been on 10, 20 rounds of antibiotics. I would say the other damaging piece here too is women on birth control. So all of that changes this gut microbiome. So this is not a moment to be depressed. This is a moment to move into action.
If you love that video and you want to dive into more of the information I have on this channel, go to this video.
If you're trying to use fasting as a tool for weight loss, congratulations. It literally is the best tool I have ever seen for weight loss. I think you should start with fasting before you change your food.